And today I'm wearing... because... Hi, and welcome to Sensitive Roots with me, Romi, where I talk about whatever's not being talked about in professional settings, especially as it pertains to Black and brown, queer and trans people. So today I'm going to focus on the connection between outreach and trauma. Some of this you've probably already heard about before, but just to give you an outline of what I'm going to talk about. 1, why do people that experience continuous trauma end up being the ones that end up doing a lot of the outreach? 2, if you are one of those people and you are doing the outreach, how do you protect yourself? And 3, if you are an ally to those people or you want to be in solidarity with those people, what can you do? What can you do to help? As always, I've included a write-up of this episode down in the description, and this is a starter for a conversation, so please let me know what you agree with and disagree with down in the comments below. So for me, trauma is, I guess, a distressing experience. It's like something that happened maybe once or maybe is continually happening that hurt me. Continuous trauma, what I mean by that is it's usually related to our identities, and that has to do with like the way that we look, the way we talk, the way where we're from, what resources we had growing up. All those can really affect, can really expose us to microaggressions and to other kinds of trauma that's like an everyday, everywhere we are experiencing this trauma. Being in a professional setting especially, and being historically excluded from those settings, you know that that person experiences potentially some sort of continuous trauma, and probably even like event-specific traumas related to that. Of course, I'm going to give a disclaimer that oftentimes people assume that we've experienced a certain type of trauma because of what our identities are, and that is misguided. So don't assume specific types of trauma. Just know that we probably or most definitely experience at least some form of continuous trauma. So now that we've defined trauma, here first let me give you the story that you've already heard, which is that we shouldn't glorify trauma. And just to kind of explain what that means is people from historically excluded backgrounds that experience trauma are often the ones that are paired up with outreach efforts that are directly related to the trauma that they experience. Kind of in a way of saying, hey, you know how to survive this, you know about this, you've been abused, right? Emotionally, physically, yeah, so this is a workshop on that, and you should, open yourself up. And so, if it's not obvious why that's an issue, one, to encourage people to expose themselves to that kind of work, or for us to expose ourselves to that kind of work, is putting us in a place where we're like likely to encounter that kind of trauma again, be likely for us to be viscerally reminded of trauma that we've experienced, and 3, just we are already busy dealing with our own trauma as well as whatever work we're doing in this setting. So we don't need extra work. That's a story you've already heard. But the truth is that, and me as a person that is always doing this kind of outreach work, especially being from a background that's historically excluded, this is a great way for us to feel like we are making a difference in an issue that not just matters to us, but sometimes it's like critical for us to survive in our professional settings that we're in, or just in the world as it is. 2, it's a way for us to connect to other people that are like us, so we often seek out these efforts as a way to build community, and in that way that could be good for our mental health. But at the same time, we have to recognize, and this is what we don't really talk about, that sometimes the people that lead these efforts aren't really well equipped to do the work, especially if you're like very much doing the work, not because you're a natural leader and you've been trained on the work and you've done the reading, but because you are doing this because you need to survive, you absolutely need to do it because absolutely no one is doing it. And oftentimes the best leaders are people in that position, but at the same time, these really passionate, really awesome leaders can also be like I said, not taking care of themselves very well, and in that way, because we have to be the best version of ourselves to really take care of others, hurting others that are doing the work with us. One, because as a person that has experienced these traumas again and again and again, you've kind of become habituated, and it's likely that you've developed either become a part of that cycle of abuse, and sometimes when you're stressed out, perpetrate the same things that you're trying to avoid. And that can be hard, especially as a person doing the work, to really realize that these other people that you are in community with and that are doing the work that you care about and that are really out there sticking out for you and for themselves, these people that you really look up to, they can also become your abusers. And that seems ironic, right? Because you're in a outreach space and you all know about these issues and you all know how to take care of yourselves, but at the same time, some of the ways in which we take care of ourselves don't really serve us when it comes to working as a group and being leaders. And it's really important to mention that a lot of these outreach efforts, they aren't usually well funded or well supported by whatever professional company or network or whatever mutual aid group is really pushing for the work to be done in the first place. And that adds to this, right? So, two things I want to talk about. One, how to protect yourself as someone working in these settings. And two, if you are someone that is creating that work for other people, what can you do to protect those people that are going to do the work? And so for the first topic, let's say that you do experience some kind of a harassment or abuse at the hands of someone that you're doing outreach with. And this happens quite often, unfortunately. I can't tell you what to do, right? Because it's specific to whatever you've experienced, it's specific to your relationship with those people. But the number one thing I do is distance myself. So you might want to recognize that this happens and that you need to take care of yourself. You are worth it, even if it means you can't do the work or you need to do the work in a different way. That's okay. You deserve to be not harassed or otherwise exposed to trauma. Yeah. So just know that happens and that's okay. Two, you might want to try to engage in some kind of restorative justice, kind of have some people mediate a conversation between you and the person that is harassing you or triggering you or otherwise hurting you. And this can be a conversation that is important because as opposed to just walking away, if you walk away, maybe someone else will come in and continue to be hurt in the same ways that you were hurt in this outreach setting, and also keeping their mouth shut because they don't want to affect the work that's being done, right? They really care about the work. And so addressing it, especially in a safe setting where no one else is being involved, that doesn't need to be involved, it's really helpful way of actually making sure that you're protecting yourself, protecting people, and you're improving the teamwork and leadership skills of whoever it is that hurt you and maybe others. And three is you could involve some bigger organization or otherwise kind of do a call out, but honestly, that isn't really guaranteed to help anyways, so yeah, you're kind of stuck. But know that you have options and that this is a normal thing that doesn't get talked about, which is what I'm talking about. The last thing you can do to avoid the harassment and the abuse and becoming that person in the first place is make sure you have good access to mental health care, and other kinds of health care, that you're taking breaks, that you're pacing yourself, that you're not doing things out of pressure, pressure that can be avoided, like pressure from other people in the group. Now, finally, I want to talk about, as a person in a professional setting, maybe even a leader of a team, you are making this work. You're saying, oh, I want to do this outreach event, or someone should do this kind of outreach event. what can you do to protect people? So one is you could actually try to do the work yourself. But don't do the work yourself if you haven't already done the reading. Listen to the people that are being addressed or helped by this outreach project that you've envisioned or that someone's envisioned. Make sure that you're not just doing whatever it is you want to or that's fun for you or that's easy for you, but being in true solidarity, which means doing what the community needs and is asking for directly. Two, you can, instead of enlisting people to do the work for you, you can enlist them to be your advisors. So you can ask them questions about, is this okay? Does this sound right to you? Like, what do you feel about this action? And this is a good way, and you should still compensate them, but generally that's like a way to have them do a lot less of the work. They're more doing the work up here. Three, you're going to want to provide with people with resources. So if you're asking someone to open themselves up, you got to stitch them back together. You got to figure out, what do they need? Do they have access to healthcare, mental especially? Do they have access to a community of support? Do they have access to breaks? Another thing, you should make sure that everybody is compensated, including yourself, because even though you might not be especially kind of triggered by this kind of work, you are still doing really hard work and you should be compensated for it. And four, if someone else is doing the work, it's unrelated to you, you want to make sure to give them a boost, whether it's on social media or on email chains or whatever. Make sure that people doing the work are being recognized for doing the work, because really they often go unheard, especially queer and trans Black and brown people. So yeah, those are my thoughts on how outreach and trauma are related in ways that I think if we recognize, we could really do a much better job of protecting ourselves, protecting others, and really doing better, more effective, more powerful work. Okay, thank you for your time. Bye!